Very warm welcome to everyone who's logged in. And this is Vikram. I'm part of the outreach team at Krea University. And on behalf of everybody, I welcome you to this webinar. Um, I think many of you have been regular to the webinars that we've been doing at Krea, under most of which is under the Krea Engage series, which is with faculty members. But I think a lot of students, parents, educators have been constantly asking us questions about, Krea being a new university, how are the students settling? What are the facilities available? How is life on campus? So I think these are questions that are really, really important. And we thought that no one else but Akshay could answer a lot of these questions for you. So Akshay, thank you so much for joining us for this session.
Thank you.
Um, at Krea, we firmly believe that well-being of our students is of paramount importance. Amid these uncertain times, our focus on sustaining a safe environment for our students has only become more resolute. So the Office of Student Life, which is sort of headed now by Akshay, works to co-create a vibrant and nurturing learning environment for students along with students. So Akshay today is going to share experiences and what they've been doing at the Office of Student Life. The initiatives on student wellness, on community building, peer counseling, online mental health, student engagement, student governance, and then a lot more. That's a lot actually to cover in one webinar, but we'll try to do as much as we can and try to make this very conversational and take as many questions from you as we can. So while we continue to hear from Akshay, I think if you have any questions, please feel free, to put them in the chat box. So Akshay, just a little small introduction for you. For everybody who's listening, I think I met Akshay for the first time in October of 2018 when we were all in the IFMR office.
Seems a long time ago now.
Yes, and we were at the Kothari Road, right, and Nungambakam.
Yes.
And we were all part of a project team, and Krea was just a name at that time.
Yeah.
So Akshay, growing up in narrow bylanes of Old Delhi, he's got an opportunity to study abroad at an impressive age of 14. He received a scholarship to pursue his pre-university as well as undergraduate education in Singapore. So while he's majored in economics at the National University of Singapore, he also explored myriad other disciplines and traveled to more than 10 countries. Following his passion for education, he came back to India to work with the Andhra Pradesh government on the groundbreaking Andhra Pradesh Private Universities Act 2016. He's received a master's in international education policy from Stanford Graduate School of Education, and now he's back in India and helping build Krea University Student Life. So before Student Life, Akshay actually headed the admissions team and was responsible in recruiting the first batch of SIS students at Krea. So when he's not at his desk, Akshay enjoys reading, traveling, and thought-provoking conversations. So Akshay, before we begin, we have more than 115 people now on this webinar. Why don't you share your journey and what, you're younger than me, and what inspired you to get into student life, or, why education?
That's a very good question, Vikram. And I think as I reflect on my journey, and thank you for reading that introduction. As I reflect on my journey, I realized, I was very, very fortunate that at a very young age, I got access to brilliant global world-class opportunities. I was growing up in Delhi just like any other kid in India, perhaps not like many kids, but I only realized later. Uh, so as I was growing up and I got all of these opportunities, I reflected through my conversations with students back home who were still studying in Delhi or who were still studying in India. And I realized the kind of exposure I was getting, how international institutions work, and how they provide exposure and opportunities to students. And that's through that process of reflection, that's what I realized. One second, sorry. I'm sorry, Vikram. So yeah, through that process, what I realized is, there's a lot of students in India who don't get that opportunity, and that really inspired me to reflect and see how I can contribute to that. And when I was studying economics, I realized there's a field of public policy where you can come back and affect change through policy. That's where I decided to work with the government. And it's very interesting, coincidentally, the AP Private Universities Act is through which Krea has been enacted. So in some sense, my journey has been, from one aspect of education to another. I worked in the public policy sphere. I was also working in Bihar because I wanted to understand the grassroots level of education in India. So I worked for almost 6 months in Bihar. And then now I'm at Krea, which is a private institution. So I've really seen the various contours, and that's what also motivated me to do a specialized degree in education. And that was also very important for me when I went to Stanford to learn about various theoretical constructs. And all of that has been very useful at Krea. So I hope more and more people, get interested in education. It's a very underdeveloped professionalized field in India. I believe we don't have as many programs which train educators. We feel that we have gone through education, so we are experts. We can advise anyone in how education should work. But just like medicine, and now we're realizing healthcare is such a professionalized field, I think education ought to be more professionalized, and we need a cadre of students, young thinkers who can work along with young minds to build the country together. Yeah.
That's actually very inspiring. Thank you, Akshay, and please take it away.
All right. So what I will try to do in today's, sorry, I'll take you through the slides. पंखा बंद कर दो please. आवाज आ रही है. Hello. Sorry. So I'll take you through the slides now. I'll share the screen. So what we have prepared for you is an overall sort of blueprint of what we have been able to develop over the last year at Krea. And I felt, as Vikram, you said, community and well-being is an important theme right now. And as we navigate through this pandemic, I thought that was the apt title for today's presentation. And that's one area that we've been really trying to focus at in Krea. So I'll begin with the overarching sort of aim for our office or for any institution to reflect on. And that is really to strive towards building a community on campus that can be a guiding light for a just, inclusive, scientifically tempered, and engaged society. So as you know, right now, the whole world is going through a churn. We are seeing all sorts of movements, not only in India. Prior to the pandemic, we had a big resistance movement happening in India. Now in the US, we are seeing in terms of Black Lives Matter. And of course, universities are not secluded or away from these movements. In fact, universities tend to play a big role in some of these movements. So what we try to do in terms of building a life at Krea or as a university, it's really a sort of bubble or a small chamber in which you can experiment with ideas. You can have a culture of respectful dialogue and discourse, which has been becoming increasingly rare outside of a educational or university context. So at least within a university context, we hope students are able to strive towards building kind of respectful dialogues and become a shining light for society as a whole in terms of what a just, inclusive, a scientifically tempered and engaged society might look like. So that's really the broader vision, and it's a very tall order. It's a vision that cannot be achieved in a year or two, but that's what new universities have the potential of doing. In the beginning of their founding years, if they set the culture right, if they have their vision right, they can set up a generation for engaging in these ideas and building a better society. So that's really what I wanted to start with, because student life is not only about the mechanics of, clubs or societies, but it's actually a much larger ambition, a much larger vision for building a community within university that can be a shining light for the world outside. Now, when I talk about the more sort of day-to-day aspects, keeping that vision in mind, of course, we have three pillars. One is of student wellness, one is of student governance, and then one is of student engagement. So I'll talk about all of these in detail. And here we also have some pictures to guide us along the way. As you can see, here's a student who's very, very passionately defending her manifesto. This was the student government elections that took place earlier last year. And there's another picture of student performance that is taking place in our open air theater at night. Some of you who might have seen the campus pictures on the website might have seen the open air theater, or if you visited the campus, you might have seen it. So it was a very interesting time last year. As Vikram, you mentioned, I was part of the admissions team, and in August, when we had 119 or 113 students rather step on campus, we didn't have anything in place for them by way of a legacy or inheritance from another cohort. Usually when you walk into an institution, you have a senior class who's there to welcome you. You have your seniors, you have your third years, fourth year students who can help you settle down. But the daunting task ahead of our first class was that they were just walking in and they looked around and there was no one. They were the only people who had to build it together with us. And that was the most exciting part. So in what I'm going to describe in the next 3 or 4 slides, all of these efforts have been taken together with the students. And I think it also relates to your point about being a new institution. So I think if you go to any institution in the world, of course, they will have their own legacies and they've existed for many generations, that they've built these cultures and traditions. But what is exciting about joining a new institution is that you will be part of building those traditions for the generations to come. So I think that's a unique opportunity that you get maybe once in a lifetime, that you're at the beginning of an institution and trying to build that institution together with others. And that was part of, I'm sure, Vikram, for you also, when we were joining Krea University, as you very, very rightfully pointed out, just 2 years ago, it was just a name, it was just an idea. And it was a small group of people. I remember meeting and having coffee together, 6 or 7 of us, trying to build this institution. It's come a long way. So similarly, for all of you who are maybe aspiring to be a part of the student cohort, right now we only have 113. We'll have probably another 170, 180 students. That's still about 300 students. And all of you coming together to build the student culture that we want to develop on campus and the community we want to develop, maybe that will set the tone for many generations, as many, many more people who enroll in the university come and look back. And these were the initial years when we set up the culture of the institution. So I think for me, being a new institution here is a very important incentive. If you are a kind of person whose temperament is to build things, whose temperament is to experiment with things, I think Krea can be a very compelling place for you to do that, especially in terms of your life outside the classroom. So I'll talk about the various aspects right now. And the first one really, which has been the most important for us in some sense, is student wellness. So this is, the way we have started looking at wellness is, of course, it's aimed at, both your physical, mental, and emotional flourishing, all of those aspects. But it's not only reactive. It's not only in response to a crisis. We often think of mental health that someone feels anxiety or depression, or someone goes through a difficult phase, and we need to respond to that. But a large part of mental health or mental well-being or wellness of a community is also preemptive. It's based on the kind of values, the kind of ethos that you have at the place, which maybe even preempt some of these things from happening. So that's why I start with the first point. In terms of wellness, the ethos that we really want to emphasize is the values of empathy, inclusivity, and that is something that we are very, very sure to inculcate in the students right from the student orientation program. So we have people who are professionals who come and talk about doing workshops, doing role plays, playing out various scenarios, because we understand all of you are coming from very diverse backgrounds. You're coming from all parts of India, and you may have different expectations in terms of how to behave, how to express yourself with your peers. But having that tone set right in the orientation gives everyone a common understanding of our ethos and the values. So that preempts some of these problems in terms of either bullying or people feeling left out or differences of opinions escalating into conflict and so on. So that's really the preemptive in nature. And even despite that, we know, and the data worldwide is extremely worrying. And again, Vikram, it goes back to the point you mentioned earlier, why I was so interested in student life is that when I was doing my research at Stanford, I realized that mental health is a problem that's becoming severe across college campuses across the world. So there is something happening in this generation that we don't yet understand. And maybe that's something to do with technology. It's something to do with the way we are raising children in this day and age. I'm not really sure that the research and the data is yet to be conclusive, but what we are seeing is, at least in the data that's come from the US, that 1 in 3 students on campus now in American campuses feels that they've experienced extreme anxiety or depression or dysfunctionality in the last year. So that is alarming, that 33% of the population at a campus feels that way, despite all the support structures. So there's something that is systemic about this. And that's why, of course, even despite all the community measures that we take, some students will feel anxiety, might have pre-existing conditions as well. So we do have support structures, and they range from faculty mentorship and we're just launching our peer counseling program, as well as access to mental health professionals. So as you know, our college is still a very, very small college. We have 30, 35 faculty members, and we're still recruiting more. And we'll only have about 300 students for the whole of next year. So every person will get a faculty member who is their mentor, is only shared by another 7 or 8 students. So you get a lot of personalized attention by your mentor. We have monthly check-ins. And if you really connect well, you can meet your mentor even more often. So that becomes a very important a way for a student to interact with an adult, with a mentor, with a person who they can look up to, and share not only their academic concerns, but concerns about their life. Oftentimes these conversations bleed into if you have problems at home, or if you're facing other issues beyond the classroom. So those are the things in terms of faculty mentorship. The second program that we are launching right now, just before this, incidentally, we had another webinar where we launched the peer counseling program. And this is to enable peers to support each other. Because what we also realize is that in the first instance, many students don't want to approach a mental health professional. There's a lot of stigma attached to it. They don't want to also approach an adult because they might think that it affects their grades, or if the administration gets to know about it, there might be disciplinary action. There are all sorts of, and these are of course wrong preconceptions to begin with. Nothing of that sort will happen, but students might have that perception. So the first port of call is usually their peers. And that's why we felt having a structure of peer counseling is going to be very helpful. Because if you're going to talk to your friends informally anyway, why not have a structure so your friends are also trained in things like active listening, in things like what are the confidentiality protocols. If something is shared in confidence, it should not become the gossip the next day. So these are things which are extremely sensitive, and we want to train students who can then become effective peer counselors, and also can become the bridge between a student and a mental health professional. Should they think they need professional help, then they can always refer and build confidence and trust in the person to reduce their stigma, to reduce their anxiety, and say that you can approach a mental health professional. So on top of all of this, as we said, we have counselors who visit our campus. They often, I think right now they visit, of course, right now there's no one on campus, but when we were on campus, they visited 3 times a week. Plus, what we also realized is that daytime visits are not sufficient. A lot of these anxiety attacks or panic attacks happen late in the night, especially if you're rushing to complete a deadline for your paper. If you want to submit something late at night, at 1 a.m., you have no one to go to. You have nowhere to go to. So what do? So Yordos, which is a very interesting platform, very interesting platform for delivering mental health. We have partnered with them. They provide 24/7 counseling support. So they have more than 1,000 counselors on their platform, and you can reach out to them either by text or by a phone call, or by having an internet session just by chat. So that has been very, very effective for students, and many of them have been reaching out to counselors through Yordos. So that's in addition to the faculty mentorship, peer counseling, as well as visiting mental health professionals on campus. Another thing that we have experimented and learned through the last year, and remember, as I said, when we came in the August of 2019, we didn't have anything because we wanted to co-create all of these structures along with the students. And that's really the beauty of building the institution together with us. Now we have student-driven projects, and these are part of the work study program that we have at the university. So you can work while you're learning. So you can also earn and learn together. That's the work study program. So we have hired 2 students as associate of the Office of Student Life to gather a lot of data, because oftentimes what we hear is anecdotal. Oh, I heard so many people were feeling distressed. I heard this person was under severe distress. So we never have an inkling of what is the data like because of the anecdotal nature of some of these stories. We might feel overly alarmed. We might not know the exact depth of the problem. So these students over the last 4 months have worked on gathering a lot of these data systematically. And now we are heading towards having a mental health dashboard where we have a survey which we can baseline, and we have it every 3 months. So we have access to good data in terms of how many people are feeling left out socially, how many people are feeling a sense of anxiety, and so on. So we can calibrate our strategy accordingly. So students have done this fantastic project. They've just submitted their report, the first wellness report. And over the summer, we are also doing more internships with the students to build on this project. So again, it goes back to our ethos of co-creating some of these things. So that's really the student wellness piece that we've put in place over the last year. At any point, I'll be happy to take questions, and of course, we'll take more. And some of you are chatting, putting in your questions in the chat box, so that's great. We'll take up some of these questions. I'll move on to my next slide now, which is about student engagement. And this is generally, I think, in the popular imagination, the understanding of student life. It's about sports. It's about cultural events and dance and music and theater. So of course, all of that is a part of the Krea community. So we have clubs and societies ranging from music, theater, sports, gardening, cooking, and even mindfulness, outdoor and media arts, and so on. So there are 18 clubs which the students formed, and they were completely left to their own devices in terms of coming up with their own rules, coming up with how they want to elect their representatives. So it's an entirely student-led process. They can initiate new clubs, and this I again emphasize as a part of the institution building. Whatever you do right now is going to stay for a long time. So how you sort of build the theater club now, or how you build the debating club now, will set the culture for how, and many institutions are known by some of these things, that, oh, so and so college has a brilliant art society, or so and so college has a brilliant debating society. So this is really institutional building in action, and many students have taken a very active role. And I mentioned here also, we have now intramural and intercollegiate sports and cultural events taking place. So what I mean by intramural is, so we have another school on campus. So just like the School of Interwoven Arts and Sciences, we have a graduate school of business. So we have 300 students who will be part of the undergraduate cohort. We have another 300 students who will be part of the business school. So we'll have 600 students who are well within the threshold to participate in events within themselves. So we have these competitions, basketball tournaments, sports tournaments. There's a theater performance, or there's a dance performance that's happening within the university premises. Then also now we have another campus just 5 kilometers down the road in Sri City called Triple IT Sri City. So there are another 1,000 odd students who we can compete with for intercollegiate tournaments. And of course, not very far away, 1.5 hours away, is Chennai. So we have students, some of them who have gone last year to places like SRM University, to IIT Madras, to participate in their cultural and sports events. So slowly that culture of participating not just within your university, but expanding that beyond, and representing Krea in outer forums, outer world facing forums, has also begun. And this again, I want to emphasize here, all of these activities that we do as part of student life are not away from any learning that you do in the classroom. So as we keep saying in Krea, we have porous boundaries. We want the people from outside to come and speak to you, and you to go out and express yourself in the real world. Plus, we want you to learn whatever you're doing in the classroom and apply it in all of that you do, be it in your community, be it in your sports, be it in your cultural performances. So all of these get interwoven across what you do. So for instance, and this will speak really well to my next slide, which is of student governance. Whatever you learn, let's say in your ethics class, for a sports person, that is very, very important, because when you're going out and expressing yourself as a sports person, many times you want to be very intensive. You want to maybe even sledge the other team. But what are the boundaries and gradations of ethics while you're a sports person? Similarly, if you're competing in a debating competition or in a cultural competition, how do you bring your ideas that you picked up in your social and historical learning class? While you are, let's say, writing the script for a play, how do you bring to bear what you learn in a literature class? So we often have faculty who are also mentors of this club, weaving in some of what they've learned or taught in their classrooms, and participating or nudging students to bring that to bear in what they do outside the classroom as well. And all of these, of course, help students build initiative, build a sense of collaboration and leadership. One number that really stands out for me, Vikram, is, we have 113 students, we have 18 clubs, we have a student government, and we also have a student constituent assembly, which I'll talk about in the next slide, which is drafting the first student constitution. All of these bodies combined have almost 60 to 70 student representatives. That means more than half of the class has been in a leadership position. Again, that can only happen in a new institution because everyone is pulling up their sleeves to build the institution together. Right? So that has been very exciting because all of the students have participated very, very actively in building all of this together with us. And my final slide, which I've been talking about, is on student governance. So that's a very important area for us as well. Making sure that the students are able to govern their own community goes back to the first slide where I said, what is the vision? The vision is not just to build only a few clubs and societies, but it's a larger vision. Can we be a shining light for the society outside? So we wanted to, again, leave this open for students to deliberate. And I go back to our discussions in August and September. I remember those nights from 9 p.m. to almost midnight. We used to meet twice a week and have these deliberations. And as you can see, many students joined us, almost sometimes 90 to 100 students, almost 90% of the class joining us in these deliberations. And after this intense process, we had the elections and we formed an interim government still. because the students felt that, some of just these discussions spread across 2 months is not going to be sufficient. We need a student body dedicated to thinking through these issues, applying again what they're learning in the classroom, and coming up with a very comprehensive student constitution. So we have an interim government right now, which is called the main hall, because some of these larger meetings were called the town hall meetings. So we are also developing some of these nomenclature, which is unique to Krea. Uh, and we have the SIS student constituent assembly, which is drafting the constitution. And as we approach the summer, all of it is in final form. And I've been talking to the students, and they've been writing about things like the rights and responsibilities of a student. So again, relating it back to their history class, or relating it back to their political science class. So it's very exciting to see students applying these ideas and then building and baking them into their student government structures. Again, this is aimed at nudging students to reflect and enact change in their own community. As you know, the mission of Krea is to help prepare students for an unpredictable world, or to help them become leaders in such an unpredictable world. And that often begins with your own immediate community, because if we try to change the whole world at once, that becomes difficult. But why not start with our own community? What is something that you notice in your community that can be better, and how can I enact that change, being a part of the student government, or even being an engaged student and nudging others to think through those issues? So that has been very, very fascinating for us. You see another picture here. This is the first elected student government, the main hall, along with the vice chancellor, the dean, and other members of the student life committee. This was for one of our meetings, and we were discussing some issues related to student governments. So students become an equal stakeholder in building not only the clubs, the committees, and other things, but also sort of tuning into to various policies of the institution and giving their inputs for various policy level decisions as well. So that's really my last slide, Vikram. And I've also shared some questions which we usually get asked quite often. And I'm sure when you do your outreach events, you hear many questions from students. So happy to answer some of those. And then we can take up some questions which are coming in from students.
Thank you so much, Akshay. I think that was very deep, and there's so much thought that's gone into building the whole thing. So congratulations on really building the officer student life. So Akshay, as you rightly said, I think in outreach, we meet thousands of students across diverse schools, geographical areas, socio-economic diversity, and we get a lot of these popular questions, right? So I'm going to, dive in directly into some of these
Sure.
and throw them at you. So one of the important things that get asked in most of the outreach sessions is describe a typical day on campus. So how would the students spend the 24 hours that they have on campus?
Right. No, I think that's a very good question. I think there's no one answer to that, because every student finds their own sort of niche and their own sort of way of spending time on campus. But I can give you a flavor or a fragrance of some of the things that students do. So, of course, we begin in the morning by classes, and some of the classes are quite early at 8 a.m. If you don't have early classes, I suppose many students catch up on sleep. I don't see much of activity on campus early in the morning, except students, some of them are doing running and yoga and so on. So the day starts usually with the academic program, which runs up to the afternoon. And that's really when, after the classes, the campus becomes alive with activity. We have a dance, and through this, hopefully, I'll also cover some of the facilities that we have on campus, because students are utilizing some of these facilities later in the evening. We have a dance studio. So many of the students are often found in the dance studio, either practicing a play that they're writing, or doing practice for a dance performance that they're putting up, or practicing or rehearsing a play. We often have events which are put together by the clubs themselves. As I said, there are 18 clubs in society. So you can imagine, even within a week, there are almost 2 or 3 events that each club is trying to put up. So either students are preparing for those, or participating in any of these club activities. We have an art studio now, which we are creating. So some students are just either painting, looking at the sunset. As you know, we are in a remote area, but it's a very natural setting. We have Satyavedu Hills here nearby. We have the waterfalls nearby. So students who are inspired by nature are just painting or going out for a small walk, and taking a peaceful walk during sunset. And towards the night, really, I think the student hub and the student lounge become active. So we have a dining hall, and then we have an indoor sports area, a gym. So students like to go to the gym at about 7 to 8, play some indoor sports for a while. There's badminton, there's table tennis, and just hang around in the gym, the student hub and lounge area. And I think towards the later end, they again maybe want to go back and revise some of what they've learned, or go back to some of their academic workload, finish some assignments. And in fact, there's another interesting data point here. When we ask the IT team, when does the Wi-Fi usage spike on the campus? It's at about 1:30 in the night. So that's when all the students go back to their rooms and they're trying to hurry up and finish their assignments. So that's really, I would say, that's how a day of a student looks like. But of course, you're free to curate your own day. If you are an early riser, you can do that. If you are a late riser, you can do that. And there are many, many ways in which students build their daily routines.
I think I've been fortunate to spend a couple of days myself on campus, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's so open, this fresh air.
Yeah.
You're happy that the campus is self-sustaining. I mean, we have a whole solar plant, and I think
yes,
you really feel happy there.
Absolutely.
And I think clean air is a privilege nowadays, isn't it? So Akshay, another question that keeps coming to us is, this comparison between a residential campus versus an urban campus. How do you think students should make a decision? I mean, you studied at Stanford. There are these debates about access and and things like that. So, what do you think is our approach, and how do you think it's better, or what are the things that get missed?
So just to understand the question, Vikram, you're asking about what makes a residential campus unique compared to non-residential campuses?
Or an urban campus, yeah.
Right. No, I think absolutely. I'll take them both those factors one by one. One is a residential versus a non-residential campus, and then one is a city versus a, let's say, a suburban or outside the city campus. So I think residential campuses, especially for a liberal arts education, are very, very important. And the undergraduate program that I went through also had a residential campus. And I feel that, oftentimes what stuck with me as a student, even 10 years after my undergraduate education now, is some of the experiences I had in the corridors when I was learning and chatting with peers, or in the dining hall when I was spending time with my peers, arguing about something that we learned in the classroom, or having a very intense debate about something that we were discussing. So I think those experiences and those memories have stuck with me more than what I learned formally in the classroom. So I think the residential component is equally important for us, and what we call corridor learning or peer learning is very important, which I think if you don't have a residential campus, certainly you can have that in smaller groups, but living along with peers who think like you, who are like-minded and have similar interests, can be very, very empowering. So that's in terms of the residential versus non-residential aspect. The second aspect is a city campus or a non-city campus. And I think both models there, I would say it's not so straightforward. Both models can be very, very empowering and very interesting, because in the middle of a city, you have access to, of course, a lot more in terms of, just being participating in the larger cultural network of city. But having said that, Chennai, as you know, is a cultural capital of India. And even last year, we have shuttles that go to the city every week. And sometimes even midweek, if students are going to attend some performance in the city, and the Carnatic music season, when that was happening in November and December, we organized for visits from the Office of Student Life, taking students, and some of our own faculty members were performing. When Akhila was performing her play, or when Professor Anil Srinivasan was performing his piano concert, we took students out. So the city is not that far away. Plus, what the sort of remote environment allows is a sense of reflection, is a sense of calm and peace away from the sort of hustle and bustle and the busyness of the city, so to speak, so that you can actually focus on the smaller and finer things of life, which is just reading a book when the sun is setting, or you can listen to the birds when they're chirping. You can go out for a walk, and some people go for cycling trips, some people go to the waterfalls. So there are so many things to do beyond that. I think nature can also be very, very, and some people take some, I won't be, surprised if some of you, if you come, it will come as a shock. Because if you've lived in cities all of your life, it takes a while to adjust to it. But having settled into the rhythm, and I've now been staying in Sri City, barring the pandemic, I've moved out of Sri City now. But when I was living there, it took me a while. But after 6 months, I was so settled in my rhythms of Sri City life that every time I used to come to Chennai and I heard the blaring noise of the horns or the traffic jams, that becomes so distant and so incomprehensible once you start enjoying sort of living away from a city.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the point that you raised about reflection, I mean, I've always lived in Bombay now, but now I'm in Jodhpur, and it's just, the time that you have. I mean, absolutely. I think it's a absolutely important thing. Another question that comes is, let's talk a little bit short term now, right? The big question for you. Yeah. And I don't expect you to completely answer this. Right. But, studying and learning, of course, is moving online. But university life is so much more than academia, right? It's about getting involved, joining clubs, society, having new experiences, making new
Right.
friends, making
Right.
mistakes. If the COVID-19 crisis continues well into the next academic year,
Right.
will students, particularly the incoming first years, will they miss out on that formative college experience? Can really student life, can it be online?
Yeah. No, I think that's the $1 million question, right? I think that's really what universities across the world are scrambling to understand right now. And I think the last 3-4 months have been very instructive for us. I think we were very very preemptive again, and sort of with the hindsight now, we can sort of almost be proud that we were able to evacuate all the students even before the national lockdown began. So early March, as we were monitoring the situation, I think by second week of March, all the students had left the campus. So we knew that this is going to become a severe public health crisis, and we decided to move the students out. And since March, the third trimester only wrapped up a week ago. So for the last 3 months, we've been operating online, and that's not only for academics, that's been for student life as well. So we had to pivot, and there's a website now which the students have created called Krea. Some of you can go and check it out, where a lot of these online activities are now happening. We have something which the students have called the venting machine, where they do, and they do very late night sessions, 9 to 10, where they just come together to vent about things or to have informal hangouts. They have coffee and they discuss movies. So all of that lounge time, as I was saying, in campus, it used to be in the student hub and the student lounge, is now happening over Zoom. So that is one transition we have seen. The other is the peer counseling program, as I said. So that has not stopped. All of these processes have not stopped. The webinar that we had just now on peer counseling, if we were on campus, that would have happened as a physical webinar. Now it's happening online. Similarly, the whole training will be now done online, and we'll have a support in terms of a helpline where students can call in to their peers. So that will be through a telephonic service. You'll deliver help through a telephone or a Zoom call. So even the mental health system has completely moved online. So all of these things we have learned to adapt, and clubs and societies, from what I hear, are hosting events online now. Even things like dance and yoga, people are doing online. Sports, of course, you can't go out and play right now, but physical workouts, and people are doing 20 minutes workout sessions with each other. So all of these things, students are very, very, savvy with technology, much more than all of us, I'm sure. And they have figured out ways to bring the whole endeavor online. So as long as the virus is here to stay with us, we'll have to learn to sort of move to either an online frame or a hybrid frame. And through all of this, one thing I've also reflected on, Vikram, I'm a firm believer that education is not only about information transfer or knowledge, it's also about the social and emotional development of a person. It's about learning from peers, and that often happens really well in a physical environment. So I'm not by any way discounting the hardship or the kind of stress this pandemic is causing. But having said that, we have to learn to adapt. We have to do the best we can in the next few months. And whenever the possibility arises, we'll get the students back on campus and be again running in full gear and full cylinders, so that people sort of sense a normalcy returning to their life.
Thank you. So one more question on of course COVID, and I think because there's so much going on in people's mind, and I think you best can answer some of these.
Right.
So what could college look like in fall? What do you think will be a post-COVID campus? What does it look like for you?
Yeah. No, I think certainly there will be certain things. Even if we decide to come back to campus, there will be certain things that we have to keep in mind till we have a vaccine or a cure for this disease. And social distancing, as you know, that's become a phrase that everyone knows now. So that will be in terms of some of the protocols that we set up in campus, even in the dining area, not sitting sort of shoulder to shoulder, but having seats vacant when you're sitting and dining, wearing of masks, maybe when you are in a sort of setting which is maybe crowded, although we have to avoid those settings as much as possible. I think outdoor sports are easier done because you're not sort of in physical proximity. If you're playing cricket or a badminton, there is enough social distancing. So some of those things can resume. So campus, I believe, can come back, but with all these protocols and measures in place, which again, the administrative team and us along with them will devise all of these protocols, keeping the government guidelines in mind. So it won't look exactly the same. Some of the things will be different. Even large lectures might be avoided initially, and maybe you listen what we used to call the flipped classroom. You listen to those lectures online, and then only come to the classroom for short discussions or a short sort of smaller group discussions. So some of those things might become more sort of as best practices and replacing the earlier norms. But again, I think as soon as we find a vaccine, and maybe in a year or so, hopefully things will come back to normalcy.
Thank you. And we're getting a lot of questions in the chat. We'll just take them in probably the next 5 minutes
Sure.
after we finish some of these questions that we already have. How important do you think is diversity when it comes to campus life? Whether it's socioeconomic diversity, gender, geography, or diversity in academic interests, or schools and boards that students come from.
Yeah.
How important is it, and how does it contribute to making a vibrant campus life?
Absolutely. I think, diversity is the most important piece for us as well, and that's why I said, the ethos of a university is built on values of empathy and inclusivity. I think when we try to build a university experience, it's important that you not only hear your own perspective, you not only start examining how your worldview looks like, but also start looking at how others look at the world. And this is something that I've learned in the last 9 months, just seeing students interact from different regions, right? When you have someone who's grown up in Delhi, who's gone to a elite school, let's say in Delhi, interacting with someone who's gone to a government school in Andhra Pradesh, they don't have any linguistic sort of connection. They don't even have the same socioeconomic background. But when they come in the same classroom and have discussions or play a sport outside the classroom or working on a theater script outside the classroom, they are forced to re-examine their worldview in light of what they're noticing. And that can only be enabled by a certain sense of diversity. And diversity, when we say, we have to be careful, we're not only looking at diversity of coming from various school boards, as you said, or various regions. I think for me, diversity is also about diversity of viewpoint. You can be two students from Delhi and even from the same school, but you can look at the world completely differently. So I think, of course, it comes more easily when you have, of course, different trainings, different backgrounds, but even having the same background, you might look at the world very differently. So the way I look at diversity is really enabling diversity of viewpoint and forcing you to re-examine your worldview in light of what others, especially your peers, are saying about the world. And that for me again is peer learning, and that can happen outside the classroom when you're sharing your room with someone who you never expected to share your room with. So of course, as you know, in our campus we have twin sharing rooms, so you will be sharing a room with someone, which can be a very interesting part of your undergraduate journey if you have not lived outside your home. Living in a residential space, again, that offers that possibility of sharing your day-to-day experiences with someone who you have no connection with, either by way of family or even friendship. So that can be, I think, a very, very empowering experience, because you're really forced to be outside your comfort zone.
Thank you. So I think a lot of questions are coming on the facilities inside the campus
Yeah.
and what's available in terms
Yes.
of sports. Also, if you could spend a minute talking about housing on campus,
Yeah.
questions like, do I get to pick my roommates and things like that? So,
Yes. Correct. Correct. No, so as I said, diversity is important, and that's why right now we don't have a policy where you choose your roommates. We allocate it completely randomly because we want you to mingle and sort of be at ease with peers from all across your cohort. So right now, the way we allocate rooms is in a completely random basis. We don't allow you to choose your roommates. So that's one. And as I said, we have rooms which are available on a twin sharing basis. So there are two people to a room. And of course, on every floor, we have common facilities like a pantry where there's a microwave and so on. So you can do some basic cooking. And all the rooms have air conditioning as well. Each of the residential towers have a large sort of common room on the ground floor where you can come together and people play a lot of board games. That's where they spend time socially as well. So those are some of the things in terms of the housing. If there's a more specific questions I can take up, I think someone is asking about will we share rooms in a post-COVID campus? So again, some of these protocols we'll have to decide. And you're right. I mean, in terms of social distancing, that might also become a challenge. So I don't have clear-cut answers to some of those questions right now.
yeah, thank you. So we'll take some questions from the Q&A box.
Yes.
So there is a student, of course, who's asked us a very specific question on admissions.
Yeah.
We will not be able to take those here. I request you to write to the admissions ID and they'll reply to you. There is Anita who asks saying, can you give more details regarding your dosts?
Yeah. So you can, of course, go to their website and see that the kind of services they have on offer. But Your Dost is, as I said, an online platform. They have more than 1,000 counselors, and you can pre-book a session, but that may not be possible for the first session. First session, you can really go online and try to find someone who you think might be able to help you. And once you choose the counselor, you can set up an appointment with them. And that could be for a video call, that could be for an audio call, or that could be for a chat-based session. So all of the three modes are available. And once maybe you'll take a couple of initial exploratory session to figure out who's the best counselor or therapist for you. Once you've decided, then working along with a therapist, you can have weekly sessions or even monthly sessions, and all of that comes free of cost. Of course, we have an institutional subscription to your those, so all of those sessions are not chargeable for any of the students. So you can have unlimited access to as many chat, call, or video call based sessions with the counselors.
Yeah, thank you. So Sai Balaji again asks, how is the lake in the campus? Do we have a
Yeah,
lake?
so
Not,
I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to call it a lake,
yeah,
but there are several water bodies on campus. And as you mentioned, Vikram, there are a lot of solar panels. So this is towards the rear or the back side of the campus. It's a beautiful, large campus. It's 40 acres. And right now the number of students is not that large. So it's very spacious. It's very lush and green. And especially during the winter monsoon that we get in the southern part of the country, during November and December, that's when the rains come. It's a beautiful campus, and that's where the water gets accumulated towards the end. These are water bodies which have been there for a long time now, and now we have some ducks and some small sort of wildlife also coming in. There's a lot of birds, and Pulikat sanctuary is not very far away from the campus as well. So we get a lot of migratory birds, and some of them you can spot from the campus as well. But we do some tours to the Pulikat Lake and the sanctuary where you get a lot of migratory birds as well. So in terms of nature, yes, there's not a lake on campus, but there are water bodies, a lot of birds, and a lot of wildlife on campus itself.
thank you. There's another question from an anonymous attendee. It would be good if you could, identify yourselves and write your name so that we can call you out. But it's fine. I mean, so the question is, hi, as much as I am for peer counseling, do you think it gives more strength to the resistance and the reluctance towards counseling and therapy? It's like when I go to a doctor, I need to go to a doctor. I don't think going to someone else would give me the guidance or consultation that is required at that point. I do believe that stigma towards mental health needs to be addressed through education.
Yeah.
When an institution supports it and encourages counseling, students will move beyond the resistance.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I think there are two aspects of that question. You know, one is, of course, just like anything else, if we get a cold or a cough, we don't hesitate in going to a doctor. Similarly, if you're feeling anxiety or if you're feeling any symptoms of emotional turmoil, there shouldn't be any stigma for you to approach a mental health professional. So that's completely agreed, and I agree with the sentiment and echo that sentiment. The other part of, whether you should approach a peer counselor or a mental health professional straight away, I think that's a more nuanced discussion, because there are gradations when we're talking about mental health. So not everyone in the first instance might want to go to a mental health professional, right? If it's about smaller things like, just facing anxiety, that may not be at a level where they feel that they want to approach a professional just yet. And that's nothing because of stigma. That may not be, and the person very well understands that. It may just be that they're more comfortable with a peer first. And once they're able to let it out and they feel better, they might not need to approach a mental health professional at all. So I think it depends on the severity of the case and the gradation of the case. And that's why the peer counselors are also trained. If they feel that the case that is coming to them is something that they can understand and they can help, and through listening, help the person, great. They're also trained to see if they are not able to help, or if the person needs psychiatric intervention, or if they need more professional care, they're able to refer. That's why I said the peer counseling is really a bridge between the student and the mental health professional. And it's nothing to do with stigma. If you're coming to a peer, it's more of a comfort level. And we understand that. And I agree with you. We also do a lot of workshops and awareness sessions so that people understand that there's no need to stigmatize mental health.
Thank you. So Balaji has another question. He's like, how is students' physical health given importance? Would we
Yes.
have Zumba, yoga, or any fitness sessions on campus?
Absolutely. So we have a sports consultant with us who has joined our team just last year as well. And you can check his profile on the website, Mr. Vidyut Sivaramakrishnan. He used to play for the Chennai Super Kings. He's a sports person, professional sports person himself. He's a cricketer, and he has been on the team as a consultant for the last 9 or 10 months. So we have been looking at building a sports program, and we have a lot of sports facilities on campus. We have cricket nets. We have a futsal cage. As you saw in the picture, we have a basketball surface. We have badminton courts. We have table tennis. So all of these sports facilities are there. Of course, there's larger fields for you to play proper soccer and football, cricket as well. So those are the sports facilities. And just before the pandemic began again, we used to have 4 sessions in a week. So 2 sessions of yoga. We have a yoga instructor coming on campus doing yoga classes. Plus the other 2 days we used to have sports coaches coming for 4 different sports. In fact, we have volleyball coaches as well. So you have sports coaches coming for volleyball, basketball, cricket, badminton, and basketball. So we have a sports program in place, which we want to now build from strength to strength. We only had 113 students. So you can imagine cricket team was always rushing to find 11 people because they didn't have enough numbers. Basketball is slightly easier with 6 people, and football also with 11 or 9 people. So I think now with the another cohort coming in, I think we'll have more numbers, and all of those teams can be beefed up in terms of their full strength. And as we build the sports program, I think some of those will be handy, as especially when we start taking on other institutions like I mentioned triple IT or institutions in Chennai or even beyond.
So if a student had to visit home, how many times a year or weekends is it possible? I think we're getting very specific questions.
Yeah. It depends on how far you are staying away from campus. I think if you're staying in Chennai, of course, I know students who go back every week for the weekend. And even if you're staying in Bangalore, every month seems likely. But I think if you're coming from a Western state or Northern state or an Eastern state, which is slightly further away, I would say once or twice a trimester is generally what I've seen, but it's completely up to you. If there's a long break in between, we have a Christmas break or a New Year break, you can go around that time. So it's entirely up to you if you're able to find the time. But usually what ends up happening is there is a lot of academic assignments going on. There's so much going on in terms of your personal projects, in terms of extracurricular projects, that students don't generally like to go in between a term. It's usually once or twice a year when they finish a term that they go back.
I think when they join, there's a lot of tendency to go back every weekend or things like that. I think as they stay on campus, they reduce.
Absolutely. So as I said, there is a lead time. I think the first few months are full of anxiety, and I can understand. And I know that very well. I left my home when I was 14, as I think Vikram mentioned earlier. So for me, I know that experience, and I moved not only in India, I moved to a completely different country. So that is a scary part initially, where you are, adapting to a new environment. But what I said earlier, we have enough support structures now by way of your faculty mentors, by way of the Office of Student Life, and now all of you will be coming in with a cohort of seniors with you. So you're not coming in as the first class. So perhaps it won't be as daunting in terms of adjusting to a new environment.
Yeah. So there's a question saying, could you share the link to the website made by students? We'll just put it in the chat box.
Yeah.
The Krea
Kreacast.com.
Yeah. The next question is, how will the admission process proceed due to the ongoing pandemic situation? I think, Akshay, could you take that?
Yeah, sure. So I have been part of
admissions for so long. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been part of the online KICs. So it was quite fascinating. I mean, when we were building the KICs last year, we felt that, this is fantastic, and we're able to take students out and take them to all of these sites for reflecting. But we also had something in the back of our mind: as the numbers grow, we have to be mindful of, what is possible. We are not going to be a travel agency, so to speak. And we need to sort of make sure that we also have a backup either through VR or a online mode of delivering KICs. And the pandemic, I think, as with a lot of other trends in society, expedited that trend. And for the last 2 rounds, we've been hosting the KICs online, the Krea immersive cases. So what we used to do physically, now, instead of taking you to a site, we make a case presentation, and then ask you to reflect. I think some of you who might have been part of the KICs know this very well. So the entire process has now moved online. And in my understanding, I've done almost 4 online KICs now, and I've done multiple, of course, physical KICs. I think, as with everything, as I was saying, in online, you can't expect 100% sort of replication. But even if you're able to reach 75, 80%, I think that's good enough given all the constraints that we're facing. So I think for me as an evaluator, I was able to look at someone's candidature at 75, 80% sort of reliability compared to what I was doing physically, which is, I think, fantastic, even though the model is difficult to do online. But I think we've been able to do a very good job.
Yeah. I think for somebody who's applying now in the 4th round or for next year, I don't think too much has changed in our admission process. I think the application process is completely the same.
Not at all.
Because it's online, and the KICs, of course, have shifted now online.
Yes.
So
I think all the change that was required was from our end, and we have made those changes. As a candidate, again, you just have to show up, and we say that you don't have to prepare. So whatever you are, we're interested in knowing you as a person. And we're interested in knowing how you want to express yourself, be it in an essay or be it in a group discussion. So I don't think you have to change anything in terms of strategy or preparation. For you, it's the same process.
Thank you. Would you call Krea an LGBTQ friendly campus?
Yes, so I think that's again goes back to my point about diversity, and this is again we leave it up to the students because there's only certain amount of intervention that we do institutionally. I think a lot of the students run all of these things by themselves. From my understanding, they've built the LGBTQ plus forum, and they have regular discussions and debates, more discussions, I would say, on that forum, and that's again an entirely student-led initiative. And we are also running an internship, as I mentioned. There are 4 projects this summer that we are running. One is on mental health, one is on LGBTQ and gender sensitization, another is on IT for student life, and another is on student orientation. So as you guys, hopefully some of you will apply and get in, and when you join for the orientation, your seniors will be curating the internship, the orientation program for you. So students again take the lead on many of these fronts. They are we facilitate, of course, some of these discussions, but they take the lead in driving some of these initiatives.
Thank you. So actually, you did mention about work study, but there's
Yeah,
a specific question on, are there campus jobs available at Krea? So you spoke from student life, but can you talk about
absolutely.
the other
Yeah,
things that are available?
there are multiple other jobs. Of course, just like the Office of Student Life, we have a library, we have a gym, we have the administration, campus administration. Uh, we have, of course, faculty who have research projects. So all of these, and we have the outreach team, we have the admissions team,
Yes.
which also offer internships for students. So all of these combined offer small, either mini projects, or sometime it could be for a gym or a library, a project, not a project, but an opportunity to help the librarian, help the sports consultant run the affairs at the gym. So all of these are regularly publicized to students, and then you apply for them. There's a due process which we follow, and once you're shortlisted and selected, there's various compensation bands on an hourly basis. Then we pay the students and compensate them for their efforts.
Okay. Um, Somebody asks, what are the updates on the roommate situation for the incoming class? How will the roommates be chosen? I think we did mention
Yeah,
it, but Akshay, if you can.
covered it. Yeah. So what we have right now is still a random allocation policy. We don't know. I think another person who's quite an astute observer mentioned that due to the COVID situation, we might not be able to have roommates. But I don't know how feasible that will be given the limited number of course, residents we have over there. So we'll have to work through that situation. Right now, we haven't come up with a clear policy as we work through it on the summer. But as the last year policy stands, we have 2 people in a room, and basis.
Uh, Akshay, I think we lost
Let's
you
see.
for
There's
some
other
time.
questions that I'm. Someone is asking how airport. Can you hear me now, Vikram?
Yes, yes, yes,
Yes. So I was just reading. I think a student had a question on the nearest airport, and does the
yes.
university provide a shuttle? Uh, so usually, what we end up doing, I think, on occasions where the large majority of the students are traveling, such at the end of the term or a beginning of a term, we have shuttles running from the campus to our TTK Road office. We have a city office, city administration office in Chennai, which is in TTK Road. So we run the shuttle from that office to the campus, to and fro. So when the students are leaving, we run it from the campus to the city office, and when they're coming back from the city office to the campus. So what ends up happening is, if you're coming by train or if you're coming by a flight, you end up taking a cab and sharing a cab with students, come to the TTK Road office, and then we pick you up from there in a shuttle. So that's how we organize for shuttles for events where students are traveling in large numbers. Otherwise, as I said, there's a weekly shuttle which travels to the campus from campus to Chennai on Sundays.
There's actually another question. It says, I will be applying to Krea in 2021, and
Yeah.
due to the pandemic, it is not possible to do many extracurriculars and internships. So
Yeah.
what do you suggest we do?
Uh, no, I think what you can do, there's still a lot of things that you can do, and I can speak from experience here. The last 3-4 months, as I said, have been very. The only silver lining I was able to find is, spending time with your loved ones. So, finding time for your family, finding time for yourself, and that can be done in multiple ways. I mean, you can have evenings when you just chat with your families, or when you can read a book, you can dedicate more time to reading. I've been taking classes in yoga online, which surprisingly work quite effectively. So you can pick up a new skill like yoga. I've been learning myself how to teach, learning myself how to cook, sorry. teaching myself how to cook, sorry. And that has also been quite interesting. So there are multiple skills you can pick up within your boundaries of the home. You can learn to cook, you can learn to do yoga, you can read more, you can talk to your peers more and family more. So many things you can cultivate. Even a practice of meditation or mindfulness that can be cultivated. There are multiple apps right now, or people you can listen to and develop some of those skills. So I think, and writing, if you're interested in writing, you can take online courses. And just now, I think for the summer, we have partnered with Coursera. So all of our students are, engaging in some of these learning habits through online learning providers such as Coursera. So definitely the internet is there for you to help and learn as many things that you want.
I think now with this, the way the pandemic is progressing and how we're living, I think there are lot more options that are coming up, whether it's extracurriculars, whether it's internships online. So
Uh,
there are opportunities, and it's
yes.
for you to, find them. And
All the internships that I mentioned for the Office of Student Life, they're now work from home internships. Similarly, as our career services office and the partnerships office has curated social impact internships for the first year students in their first summer. And we were also quite alert to the possibility that we may not be able to, right from March and April, we might not be able to send students out for these internships working in an office. So all of these have now been converted to work from home internships, and again, students are doing them online. So I'm sure if you look out for online opportunities, you'll find many, many activities, both in terms of extracurriculars as well as professional development.
another very, very specific question that we have. She says, I wanted to confirm if September 1st is the first day for incoming students, would we need to bring in terms of ethnic clothes, etc., to be very specific?
No, I think there's no sort of restriction or emphasis
I
in
think
terms of what.
we have announced September 1st to be the start of the
Yes,
term.
yes. September 1st will be the start, and if it's not on the website, I think it will be there soon. But officially, I think we have announced 1st of September as the starting of the cohort, the second cohort. And there's no requirement in terms of an ethnic or an otherwise sort of dress code that you have to follow. I read one question here, Vikram. Someone is writing that personally, I'm inclined towards fitness and weight training, but not sports. Would it be compulsory for me to join a team or do sports? Nothing is compulsory. Again, Pratap, I think, has asked the question. It's entirely up to you. Again, the sports program I was talking, it's based on how many students want to come and do yoga, and if they want to join a class of, a team of soccer or a team of cricket. So nothing will be forced upon you. It's entirely up to you. And as you said, beyond the sports club, we also have a movement club, which looks exactly at fitness the way that you do, through running or weight training and so on. So I'm sure you'll find like-minded peers who might want to do fitness differently, and you can always associate with them and work together with them.
Yeah, thank you. So this Pari, Parishi Samani, she
Yeah.
asked if you can tell in brief more about student governance.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, I covered that briefly earlier. I'll tell you a little bit about the way the current interim government is structured. So we have four committees. We have the academic committee, we have the extracurricular committee, which looks at all the extracurricular activities, be it sports and cultural activities. We have something called a campus life committee, which looks more at the infrastructure and the residential life policies and so on. And then finally, we have a finance and resources committee, which looks at budgeting for the clubs and societies, and also liaises with the Office of Student Life to get funding for student events. And all of these four committees work together. There's no hierarchy between the committees. Beyond these, there are two moderators who work for moderating as I call the interim government as the main hall, who work for moderating the main hall as well as the town hall meetings where all the students come together. So there is no pointedness in the model in terms of having a person who's the president or who's a secretary or who's a treasurer. That's the traditional model. But the students have chosen a very different, a very unique sort of flat hierarchical model where there are committees which work alongside each other and there are moderators, and none of them is placed above the other. So it's a decentralized sort of decentralized model where there's no clear hierarchy and people work together and come together very, very interestingly. And as I said, the Constituent Assembly is going to work through the summer, and they've written most parts of the most part of the Constitution, and they will now release the Constitution hopefully before 1st of September. So as when all of you come, you would have a student constitution, and that's not to say you can't amend it. I think many of you will come with your own ideas and might want to amend the Constitution, and that's been one thing that we've been telling the students, that think about not only your cohort but think about all the incoming cohorts and think about the numbers. From 113, quickly it starts becoming 500, 600. So the government structures that you have built now should be able to scale and be able to serve a larger student community as well. So all of these considerations students have kept in mind while designing these systems.
There's actually another question saying, given the current state of the country, do you think the trimester one would go online? I think it's anybody's guess
Yeah.
right now, and the way the public, the public health situation unfolds. We have announced 1st September to be the start of the trimester, but we don't know, right? Akshay, is there any progress on that?
No, we don't know whether it's going to be online or on site. I think that's a decision that, as you know, the situation is very, very fluid, and
Yeah.
almost every week there is change in protocols and guidelines. So I think taking any decision right now we feel might be premature. So we don't. And I'm not part of the team that is deliberating on that. So I don't know when we'll take that decision, but hopefully maybe closer to the end of summer in July or so we'll get to know, and as we plan for the orientation as well.
Yeah.
Vikram, I'll take a couple of questions. There is a couple of questions from Sashwat in the early parts of the conversation. He writes, is there a system to visit an on-campus counselor, or is it based on a first come first serve basis? So right now we don't have a system in terms of a first come. It is based on a first come first serve. You don't have to register. There's a counselor's room on campus, which is in a discrete location, so that again, going back to the point of stigma, if people feel, again, just to incentivize them, it's not in the midst of a lot of classrooms or other sort of prominent places. You can quietly go and visit the counselor as well. That's the system. But we are also working, as I said, with the IT team now, and maybe we'll have a Krea app next year, where for some of these things like booking appointments with a counselor, or booking sports facilities, or booking or even paying for your meals on campus, some of that will happen through the app now. So I think that should be taken care of. Another question, could we create a club, for example, quizzing, and request a particular faculty member as a club mentor if he or she consents? Surely, I think in terms of the formation of the club, as I said, if 5 like-minded people come together, you can always form a club in society. It's entirely student-led. And you can also approach a faculty mentor if they are consenting. Of course, they can be your mentors. So yeah, those are.
Thank you. So I think there are also a lot of questions that are coming on admissions and how to prepare and the policy and all of that. So I
Yeah,
think for all of you, we will certainly do another session with the outreach and maybe the admissions team who can talk and answer a lot more about these questions. But I'm going
yeah,
to skip some of these, and maybe if we have time, we'll come back and take more
yeah.
specific questions to the Office of Student Life. So there's a question, Akshay, which says, will the institute be shifting to a larger campus in the next few years?
Yeah, so I think all of these are again difficult right now. We of course had a plan to move to a new campus, and I think that plan, as of now, because construction activities are happening in a limited way, I don't know whether the construction of the new campus is currently underway or not. But the plan earlier was to, I think, by 2021 move to the new campus, or 2022. Some of that might get delayed now, but certainly I think for the incoming class, hopefully you'll get to spend at least 1 or 2 years, especially if you do the 4th year, which is an optional year, maybe 2 years at the new campus. So that's certainly the plan, and it might get delayed, but definitely the new campus is in the offing.
There's Amina Abbas who asks, is there days to go out? So I think she's trying to ask whether you can step out of the campus. What are the days? Are there limitations?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, going to Chennai is a bit tricky because it's far away. But if you want to do that, I mean, not many students, what we've noticed, do that on a weekday. But on weekends, certainly, even if you want to go by yourself, there is a local train station nearby called the Tada station, and you can take a local train to Chennai. So that's certainly a possibility. When you come in for orientation, we actually have forms. Some of you might be minors still who are 17. So we do ask your parents to indicate what is their comfort level in terms of a policy for leaving the campus. Some of you who might be above 18, the policy is a bit more lenient. And then you can sort of step out when you want to. But at night, we do, because of security, follow a protocol of students coming back to the campus by 10 p.m. and to the residential dorms by 1 a.m. So those are the policies that we have right now to again ensure safety, because the campus is in a remote location. So after 10 p.m. going out on the highway may not be the best idea. And also coming back to your rooms, because as I said, the campus is a vast sort of campus, and there are places at the back where there's water bodies, and there might be wildlife in terms of even sometimes we spot snakes or amphibians on campus. So just for your safety, we ensure that have to come back to campus by 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. you have to be in your rooms.
Thank you. I think Amina has another question. She says, in Krea, there exists a diversity in students in every case.
Yeah.
How is a newcomer going to compete in such a situation?
A newcomer in what sense? I mean, everyone who is going to come along with you will be a newcomer, and all of you will be, working together to build your own identity, build the institution's identity along with each other. So I think everyone is equally a newcomer. You don't have to worry about, feeling that you are coming from a different background. So how will you be able to adjust? I think the first cohort has done a very good job, and I'm very proud to say this, that after the first year, I'm more confident that our students are very empathetic. And if you reinforce this message enough, everyone sort of comes to a common understanding of our ethos. And that really allows people to empathize with each other and learn to appreciate each other's differences. And that doesn't mean that there won't be instances which might cause stress or which might cause conflict. But what I can say is, throughout that whole process, you will learn along the way. I mean, if you do it once and you realize what you did, you'll reflect on it. Maybe it wasn't the best way to deal with it. The next time you will be wiser for it, right? So this is the time of college. You don't have to come with a perfect expectation that everything will go smoothly. There will be anxiety, there will be nervousness, there will be instances when you feel uh, you could have dealt with certain situations better, but that's the whole point. You come to college to make mistakes, otherwise you could go straight to work. But college is the safety net which provides you enough opportunity to make mistakes, and that's absolutely fine. We have all of us along with your peers to help you through those ways. Yeah.
Thank you. I think there's Miss Parul Chitnis. I think she's a mother. She says, is there a cricket net in campus? Is there any
Yes.
coach? Do you allow to participate in interstate cricket matches? My son's favorite subject is biology, but cricket is his passion.
Absolutely, we have cricket nets. In fact, we refurbished the nets last year, and they're of very high quality now. We have Mr. Vidyut Sivaramakrishnan, who's our sports consultant. He's a professional sports player and a cricket player actually himself. So he will be able to advise if you definitely decide to come. And in terms of participation, of course, that has to be balanced along with the academic rigor of the institution. So while we allow students to go and participate, they have to take consent of their teachers and also the dean, if they're especially leaving in large groups and going for a longer duration. You can of course go and you can be consented to go, but that has to be in line with the academic policy as well, because at the end of the day, we are an academic institution and we don't want to compromise on the academic rigor. So those have to be balanced, but that doesn't mean that you can't go. Last year also, as I said, people went and participated in tournaments and competitions outside. So as long as it's done in a reasonable way, which doesn't affect your academic performance as well, I think that should be possible. Mukundan has a very important question. I had him for one of my KICs as well. So hi to you, Mukundan, and hope you're doing well. He asks, how far is the campus from the closest hospital in case of an emergency? Also, is there a pharmacy or a dispensary inside the campus? So that's a very good question. Thanks for reminding us. We have a medical center on campus. The doctor comes every day for about an hour or 2 hours in the evening. Otherwise, on 24/7, there's a nurse who's placed in the medical center. So even if there's an emergency at night, the nurse is trained to deal with an emergency. There's a 24/7 ambulance which is stationed on the campus. So if students or anyone who has to immediately be taken away for a medical emergency, the nurse and the ambulance are 24/7 available. The nearest hospital we have is the SIMS hospital in Sri City. And that's a hospital which is about 5 kilometers away from the campus. And beyond that, if you need a larger sort of facility, then we have the Apollo Hospital in Sulurpeta, which is also not very far, about 25 kilometers. And of course, even if you want to go further, of course, Chennai is not too far away, 1.5 hours. Once you get some basic care at either SIMS or Apollo Sulurpeta, you can be transferred to a hospital in Chennai. So those facilities, and of course we are constantly working to improve some of these facilities. As the situation with the pandemic goes, I'm sure there will be some change in terms of improving the medical infrastructure on campus as well.
And just to give you perspective, I think Sims, when Akshay says 5 kilometers, it really takes 5-6 minutes because there's
Absolutely.
no traffic. It's not a
Yeah,
city.
yeah,
So
it's a highway. Yeah.
yeah. And there's Meher Pannu. She asks, how far is the nearest airport? I don't know whether we answered this
We covered.
already. Does
Yes,
the
we covered.
university provide a shuttle service from the airport to the campus?
Yes.
have we answered this
Covered
question?
that. We covered that. I said, we have facility when large number of students are traveling, we organize for a shuttle to the TTK Road office. Ishan has a question in terms of if it's possible to train martial arts while on campus. Absolutely. I think we had another student last year, Abhimanyu, who's also a mixed martial arts athlete, and he has performed at the national level. And I remember he teaching some of his peers and coaching some of his peers. He used to take classes on MMA. So that's definitely a possibility if you want to work alongside him. And that's where the potential lies. If you find even a couple of people who are interested, you can always draw in your peers and teach them and build slowly a small sort of culture where people are participating in activities. So that's definitely possible. Uh, there's one question about uh, the network connectivity. How is the network connectivity? So of course, there are a couple of things actually here I want to highlight in terms of the IT interventions that we've taken place, that we've done in the last couple of months. And that's again coming from the world moving online. So what we have done is, we have improved the network connectivity on campus. I think the Wi-Fi now is very stable on campus. It's functioning at a very high clipping because all the teachers have been teaching from the campus online. So I think the network connectivity on campus is really good now. That's one thing. The second is we have now also invested in a very good learning management system. If we are moving to online classes, and if even even with coming back to campus, if we sustain some of the hybrid learning or blended learning, then we needed a very good learning management system. So we have just finalized Canvas, and I had Canvas when I was at Stanford. So that's really one of the top line learning management systems that is used across the world. So that's going to be the learning management system when some of you join the university. So in terms of the IT infrastructure, we've really ramped it up in the last few months to be able to deliver a seamless online experience.
Thank you. Thank you, Akshay. And I think we're over time. We've taken a
Yeah,
minute more, but I think that's fine. Thank you
yeah,
so much to everybody who's joined, and we will continue to, do these sessions. In fact, the next one we have with Krea Engage with is with Professor Anil, who's an amazing faculty member, and he's going to talk wonderful things about music and science and philosophy and economics and things like that. So please, stay tuned to our social media channels, to our website. And thank you again, Akshay, for taking time out. I know you are very busy with planning the next year, but thank you so much for doing this. Hello.
September.
Yeah.
Yes. No, Vikram, I was saying thank you so much for hosting me, and thank you to everyone who participated in the session. And I'm really looking forward to working with some of you who decide to join Krea University. So hope to meet you soon.